Hello everyone, I'm Kathleen Pelly. Welcome to the special omnibus edition of Journey with Story, where you can listen to all of this month's episodes in one single sitting. Oh, mums and dads, and all of you grown-ups, you might be interested in a little handout that I have available on my website that gives you lots of tips on raising kids who love to read. Of course, I know you're interested in that because you're already sharing this storytelling podcast with your little ones. So go to www.journeywithstory.com and click on the Resources tab at the top. And you can also find the link in our episode notes. Now, let's take an omnibus journey with story. Let's take a journey with the two widows. Far away among the rice fields, there once lived two widows named one Maline and one Encore. They had lived together since their husbands had died. They were good women who had spent their lives planting the rice crop or paddy on the slopes of one of Singapore's hills, Bukit Seguntang. They were kind to the children of the village, making special things for them when it was festival time. If anyone came to their door asking for something, one Maline and one Encore never turned them away empty-handed, even though they had very little themselves. 7 days a week, they worked the fields. If their rice crop failed, they would be left with nothing. Tending the crops, then, was their life. In the evenings, they did the household chores and looked after their animals. Going to bed at sundown and getting up at sunrise meant that there was never a moment of spare time. Day in and day out, the women worked extremely hard and never complained about their lot. One dark and silent night came a thundering noise, so loud that it woke the women out of their deep sleep. "Oh, what is that noise?" called out one Maline in a quavering voice. "I think it must be elephants." Yes, that's what it is. Trumpeting elephants," replied one Encore. "But if the elephants are trumpeting, that means they are also trampling. And if they are trampling, our paddy will be destroyed," wailed one Maline. She was quite right. If the elephants really were on the rampage, then their crops would be done for. The two women would have nothing left to eat or sell in the market and would certainly starve. They got dressed and rushed out of their house as fast as they could, only to see a bright light glowing on the far hill. "Oh, now I am really scared. What can it be?" cried one Maline nervously. "Is the hill on fire?" "No," said one Encore, sniffing hard. "If it were on fire, we would be able to smell the burning." "Could it be fire from a dragon's mouth, or a monster, or a glowing jewel?" asked one Maline, her imagination now running riot. They huddled in their doorway for a while and watched, and waited, and worried themselves silly. Only then, when they were worn out with worry and propped up on each other, did they drop off to sleep. When they woke up, stiff and sore, the sun was already shining. They stared hard at the hillside, which was gleaming and glittering gold in the sunlight. One Malini, feeling braver after her sleep, said, "Let's climb the hill now and find out what was glowing in the night." This time it was one Empok's turn to be more timid. "Oh, you're mad! We can't go alone, just us two women. We might need help. What if it's a vicious beast?" "Oh, come on, we can take a peek and run away if it's anything too scary," came her friend's reply. Together, they climbed the hill cautiously, stopping to peer into the distance from time to time. But they saw nothing except the glow, which got brighter as they drew nearer. To their astonishment, they discovered that their rice paddy was growing golden grains with silver leaves and golden stems. "Aye, so this is what we saw. But how did it happen?" said one Malini, whispering with disbelief. They climbed higher and, to their amazement, saw 3 elephants. Riding the elephants were 3 young men, looking like princes, wearing brightly coloured, jewel-studded turbans. They each wore a shimmering silk costume, decorated with silver filigree, with a cape that flowed down to their knees. "Who are you and where are you from?" asked one Malini in her bravest voice. "Are you magic, the sons of fairies or genies, perhaps?" asked one Empok. The 3 men replied together, "We have come from Dika. Our father is the great Raja of Kalinga, like our grandfather before him. Our mother is the Princess of Dika. We inherited magical powers from them." The 2 widows were mesmerized by the exciting story the men began to tell. But when they had finished, one Malini was still suspicious. She folded her arms across her chest and spoke out. "This all sounds very splendid, but can you prove any of it? How do we know you're not a gang of cheats?" The royal princess took turns to reply. "The turbans that we wear show our royalty. If you don't believe in our powers, look at your paddy fields. We have heard about you and the way you have dedicated your lives to growing excellent paddy. We turned your paddy into gold and silver for you, so that you will never be poor again. From now on, this hill will be a sacred place, and you will always grow golden rice grains." Like most country people, one Malini and one Empok really believed in magic, and so they bowed before the royal princes. They even took them down the hillside to their house and prepared a simple but delicious feast for them in their tiny kitchen. Once the princes had eaten, they rode away in their elephants and were never seen on Bukit Si Guntang again. It was as if the whole thing had been a dream. But from that day on, the paddy field of the two widows produced gold and silver for the rest of their lives. If you ever come close to Bukut Si Guntang, look carefully. It doesn't matter if the weather is bright or dull. The mountain slopes shimmer like a precious metal. Now, let's take a journey with the water horse of Loch, Garve. Many long years ago, the Ech Ushkja, the water horse of Loch Garve, took a wife. She loved the beautiful mountains and hills surrounding the clear waters that were filled with gleaming fish. She loved swimming with her husband and snatching fish from the fishing lines of frustrated fishermen. She loved her watery home during summer. But when the seasons changed, the waters became very cold, and the poor wife complained. Once it was winter, and the waters froze. The poor wife wept and complained even more. The water horse loved his wife, but he didn't know what he could do to make her happy. One cold, windy day, as he was swimming close by the little village of Garve, he looked at the cottages. He saw smoke coming from the chimneys and knew that inside the families were cosy and warm. Then he had an idea. He looked across the loch to where a cottage stood alone, sheltered by the mountain. A builder lived there, and he was at home, for smoke rose from the chimney. The water horse dived down deep and began to swim faster and faster, heading for the bank of the loch. Suddenly, a huge wave of water hit the shore, and out of the spray stepped a great black stallion. The water horse pranced up to the door of the cottage, and he stomped his foot 3 times. The builder looked through the window, wondering who could be calling on him. He saw the black stallion, water dripping from his mane and tail, and he knew that this was the Ech Ushkja. The water horse snorted and stomped again, and the man knew he must answer the door. The builder stood unafraid, listening to the water horse explain his problem. He saw how much the water horse loved his poor wife, and for some long time the two discussed how to resolve the situation. The builder told him that he would need help, for the task was not easy. And the black stallion readily agreed on one condition. "I will wear no bridle or bit in my mouth," he said. and the builder understood he did not want to be trapped. "Will you promise to return me to my home safe and sound?" asked the builder, who knew the stories of people taken to a watery death by water horses. "I will do you no harm," the water horse replied. "And what payment do you want for the work?" "Well, you can promise not to take the fish from my fishing line in the future," laughed the builder. In the days that followed, people on the other side of the loch peered through the mists and sometimes caught a glimpse of a great black stallion hauling stones for the builder. No one knew he had a horse, and no one knew of a black stallion in Sutherland. One or two people thought of the legend of the water horse, but no one spoke of it. Finally, all was ready, and the water horse asked the builder to sit on his back. This was the real test of trust. Mounting a water horse was a dangerous thing to do. But the Ushkja had asked a favour and made a promise, and the builder looked into his dark eyes and mounted without fear. The builder and the water horse took all the stones to the depths of the loch. And eventually the job was done. He had built a fireplace and a chimney, and at last the poor wife was warm and the water horse was happy. In all the years that followed, the builder never had a fish snatched from his line, much to the frustration of the other fishermen. When times were hard, he found fish on his doorstep. Just once or twice, people saw a great black stallion hauling stones for the builder. That part of Loch Garve never freezes, of course. And now you know why. Now, let's take a journey with the King's Gift. One day, King Malcolm was resting in his great hall at the end of a day's hunting, when there was a knock at the door, and a steward came in. "Excuse me, sire, there is a man outside bringing you a gift," he said. King Malcolm liked nothing better than a gift, and he told the steward to show the man in. He was surprised to see such a poor-looking man, and even more surprised to be given such a lovely gift, a box carved with hunting scenes. There were huntsmen on horses with dogs, running ahead, chasing a stag, all beautifully carved around the edges of the box. As the king turned the box, he heard something rattling inside. He lifted the lid, and there was a silver bowl, beautifully decorated, and inside the bowl he saw the words, "Give this to the one you love." It was a most unusual gift, and he thanked the man and asked the steward to ensure he was given wine and a good meal. During the evening, the king looked at the gift again and again, admiring the fine carving on the box and thinking about those words inside the silver bowl. How he would love to keep it. But finally he knew what he had to do. He loved the Queen, and so in the morning he asked the steward to take the gift to Queen Margaret, who was delighted to receive a gift from her husband. She looked at the box, carved so beautifully with hunting scenes. She smiled, for she knew how much the king loved hunting. Then she heard something rattle inside the box. And when she opened it, there she found the silver bowl. It was charming, and when she looked inside, she saw the words, "Give this to the one you love." The Queen was puzzled, for this was a gift she could not keep. All morning she wondered about those words until she knew what she had to do. She would give it to the captain of the guard, for he served her faithfully and protected all of them. She called for the steward, who took the box to the captain of the guard. The captain of the guard was very surprised to receive such a fine gift from the Queen. He admired the finely carved box, and when he opened it, he found the silver bowl. Then he saw the words, "Give this to the one you love." He would really have liked to keep the Queen's gift, and all afternoon he wondered what to do, until, at last, he knew. There was a pretty maid who worked in the kitchens, and she always smiled so sweetly at him. So he took the box down to the kitchens and gave it to the maid, who blushed with joy and bobbed him a curtsy. But the cook came by and sent him away. The maid looked at the wonderful box. She had never received a gift before, and this gift was special indeed. She looked at the carvings and opened the box and found the silver bowl. It was perfect, but when she looked inside, she saw the scratching. The cook looked over her shoulder and said, "That is writing. There are words inside the bowl. Take it to the monk at the abbey and he will read it to you." So the maid took it to the monk, who admired the extraordinary box and silver bowl, and then he read the words, "Give this to the one you love." The maid returned to the castle and wondered what to do. She would like to keep this gift, but she could not. She thought and thought, until at last she knew just what to do. The king was in the great hall, seated by the fire, when there was a knock at the door, and a steward came in. "Excuse me, sire, there's a maid outside bringing you a gift," he said. King Malcolm was surprised, But he asked the steward to show the maid in, and after she bobbed him a curtsy, he asked her, "Why would you bring me a gift?" The maid replied, "You have given me work, food and shelter, and I am very happy here at the castle, and I love my king." She gave the king the carved box and slipped out of the hall, while he turned that box round and round, admiring the fabulous hunting scenes. The king smiled as he opened the box and took out the silver bowl, glancing at the words inscribed inside. He walked over to the table and he poured himself a glass of wine, and he filled the silver bowl with water. Then he gave it to his favourite hunting hound. Now, let's take an encore journey with the Pobble who has no toes.
The Pobble who has no toes had once as many as we. When they said, "Some day you may lose them all," he replied, "Fish fiddle-de-dee," and his Aunt Jobiska made him drink lavender water tinged with pink, for she said, "The world in general knows there's nothing so good for a Pobble's toes." The Pobble who has no toes swam across the Bristol Channel, but before he set out he wrapped his nose in a piece of scarlet flannel, for his Aunt Jobiska said, "No harm can come to his toes if his nose is warm, and it's perfectly known that a Pobble's toes are safe, provided he minds his nose." The Pobble swam fast and well, and when boats or ships came near him, he tinkledy, binkledy, winkled a bell, so that all the world could hear him, and all the sailors and admirals cried when they saw him nearing the further side, "He has gone to fish for his Aunt Jobiska's runcible cat with crimson whiskers." But before he touched the shore of the Bristol Channel, a sea-green porpoise carried away his wrapper of scarlet flannel, and when he came to observe his feet, formerly garnished with toes so neat, his face at once became forlorn on perceiving that all his toes were gone. And nobody ever knew from that dark day to the present whoso had taken the Pobble's toes in a manner so far from pleasant. Whether the shrimps or crawfish grey or crafty mermaid stole them away, nobody knew, and nobody knows how the Pobble was robbed of his twice 5 toes. The Pobble who has no toes was placed in a friendly bark, and they rowed him back and carried him up to his Aunt Jobiska's park, and she made him a feast at his earnest wish of eggs and buttercups fried with fish, and she said, "It's a fact the whole world knows that Pobbles are happier without their toes." I hope you enjoyed this special omnibus edition of Journey with Story. And don't forget, if you had a favourite story, do let us know. Just go to www.garve.com www.journeywithstory.com, click on the Contact Us and fill in the form. And if you want to be considered for a shout out on the show, send us your drawings there too. Click on Contact Us, fill in the form and attach your drawing there. You can also see the link in our episode notes. Cheerio then, join me next time for Journey with Story. Music and post-production was by Colette Jonas.